All right. It is 4 p.m. We will call the August 27th Park Board to order, and we'll start with the oath of office.
JD, if you want to take a stand, please. Raise your right hand, and then repeat after me. I, Joshua Burns, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Brainerd Parks and Recreation of the City of Brainerd, Minnesota, to the best of my judgment and ability. So help me God. All right. Nice job.
We'll move on to roll call when you are ready, Jesse.
Burns?
Here.
Sandy?
Present.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Shape?
Here.
Miller?
Here. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. We will be adding a section to new business, so a 9E for what exactly?
Mr. Chair, if I can add an item for a request for trespassing from Gregory Park.
Very good. So we'll move to approve the agenda with the addition of the trespassing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of the agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We have an agenda. Moving on to the consent calendar. Notice of the public, all matters listed are routine by the board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the board votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar consisting of the approval of minutes, disbursements, and financial reports.
Second.
Motion and a second. Jesse, please call the roll.
Burns?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Shape?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes. All right. We have our consent calendar. Unfinished business. We will discuss the rotary solar project. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we do have an update. After the last BPU Commission meeting, the Public Utilities Commission meeting, we did get clarification that the Utility Commission did elect to approve $32,000 of their funds towards the rotary solar project. Based on their calculations, it would take them approximately 39 years to achieve a return on the initial investment on that. I did include some of the facets of a potential agreement should the park board agree to continue moving forward with this project. Again, that Rotary was going to provide a $10,000 stipend towards the project, that the Public Utilities Commission would agree to fund the remaining portion, that in exchange we would receive the energy credits and the revenue sales from the solar installation. We would still require that Rotary provides the required documentation. I think this was called out in the June presentation, things like multiple required bids before any of the contractors would be selected to do the work. That the panels would be covered under the city's insurance, and that damages would be covered through our insurance claims process. The generated electricity would potentially use to power cameras, lighting outlets that are installed at the pavilion. Any other expenses the city would have for administering this program, that would be covered by the electricity that's generated, the sales of the electricity that's generated. And then if at any time the park board would like to have the panels removed, they would be done at the city's expense. So those are different things that I've heard on my end of things that should be included in the agreement. Staff would like to hear a direction from the park board of what they would like to hear on an opinion of early removal of the panels in a draft agreement. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting. There would be concern from the BPU side about potentially removing these panels, let's say after 2 years, and we realize that it's something that we really don't want to see in the parks after several damages or something like that. Obviously, after putting in $32,000, they would want to recoup some of those costs. Should there be some sort of a facet of that agreement that shows some sort of a recuperation schedule? Would it be a 15-year warranty phase out of that funding? That's just slowly, is it 100% in year one and then it just works through the 15 years? Is it some other different form or fashion of that? So staff would like some direction from the park board of what would be included in that should you want to move forward with this project. So right now staff is just looking for direction from the park board of how to proceed with this project and any other facets of a potential agreement should it like to do so.
Thank you, Jesse. Questions, comments, or further concerns for Jesse? So it was unanimous, the money, yes, okay. 39 years though, is that different than the projection that we originally had?
The original projection was from Winkleman Solar. This is from BPU that was included in your packet. So this is one that BPU staff had performed.
Okay.
And based on the updated pricing, including the cost of the electrical service installation that they would have to get from the existing facility out to the pavilion. So they included that cost as well.
Okay, yeah, because I thought the amount of time before we actually received some sort of return on this was shorter, not 39 years, right? I mean,
Do you remember what that was, Jesse, from
Like
the
from
Winkleman proposal?
If I remember correctly, I think it was like 13,
And what was the warranty period on those panels?
15.
15 years?
because it seems like really to get, oh, yeah, sorry.
You can continue. I'm just curious of the language, if you can scroll up there. At the cost to the city, who is the city? The removal will be done at the city's expense. Who is the city? Where is this money coming from? Because there's a big difference. Is it BPU? Is it, I mean, I'm assuming it's not BPU. I'm assuming it's Park Board, correct?
Clarification. I could include either one in the agreement. I'm thinking if that the park board wanted to have these solar panels removed, that it could be at the park board's direction and budget. But I would take direction of what the park board would like to see in that agreement.
Like I said, further down the rabbit hole we go. The things looks a little worse every time. Like I said, I do like that the commission was unanimous, that they want to see this happen, are willing to fund it. But, you know, can those things really exist on top of the structure for 39 years for us to get money back? I am not confident in that. But, I mean, as far as, Andrew, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, if BPU's on board with it, I'm fine with it. I guess in terms of the removal, to me that, like, I think generally as a board, we like the idea of solar power in the park. And if it's there in a way that's generating power and it's not unsafe, right, it's not arcing or falling on people, those are the only things I would see as a reason the park board would want to remove it. And then in that situation, right, we do need to hammer out, is that us, is that BPU, is that somebody else? I don't think there is anybody else that would remove the panels, but I think it's kind of a, what situations do we want to take it down in, and then who pays for it?
So I think direction would probably just be that, I mean, again, we'll continue to work on the agreement before we obviously make any sort of motion on it. But I guess it would be if it is us that wants them taken down, would come out of the park board's money or the parks budget.
Yeah, my only concern is it's just, like you said, it's a long time frame. It's 39 years. What's the life expectancy of them? If the warranty's only 15 years, you know, once you get past the warranty, you're crapshoot, and that's another, you know, over double that time frame in the expected life expectancy before we even pay for them.
So per the presentation, the warranty period wasn't exactly the time that they just stopped working. It was the time that they're going to provide you a certain level of generation. I think it was over 90%. I can't remember the exact percentage. There was a certain percentage that they were supposed to generate beyond the 50, or within that 15 years. Beyond that, they would not warranty that it would generate that same amount of percentage. So they would continue to, you would assume, continue to still work and generate electricity. It may just be a lesser amount of that electricity over time. Over 40 years, I don't know what that number is, and I couldn't tell you how long they would eventually last in the park.
Very good. So any further clarification besides the who pays?
I guess, in my mind, it doesn't really matter who pays for it, because whether the park board is paying for it, that's coming out of the city's budget, and whether BPU pays for it, it's coming from the ratepayers that are paying for the utilities that are, serving the city. And, we're all on this board as ratepayers or taxpayers, however you look at it. And so whether it's coming from our rates or it's coming from the city's general tax levy, I don't think that, in my mind, is really not from a tax-paying citizen perspective, I don't think that's necessarily.
Well, I will say that the council is not going to be interested in this coming out of their budget. This would
Yeah.
come directly out of your budget as a park. So when you decide to get rid of it, I can almost tell you for a fact that the council is going to say, that's fine, but it's going to come out of the park budget. It is going to be a park expense.
I'm having a hard time justifying a payback period of 39 years. How long have solar panels been around? Is it 20 years we've seen this technology? Have we seen a full life cycle out of, I don't know how long this technology has existed. Do they last that long? That's, I think, a question that is still outstanding, whether it's less efficient and they still work, but.
Like I said, it's just the projections are just a little bit different. Again, the full confidence of the commission to fully fund this project unanimously, I get it. Obviously we can't change that number. That doesn't change. 39 years is the payback period, so it is what it is. So for now, let's just get staff clarification on anything in here, and then when this comes back to us, we can make a conscious decision about whether or not we want to move forward with the project. Because, again, the more information we seem to find, the more kind of hurdles it does possess, and more research and information we probably need to make an educated decision. So, apart from clarification, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Just further clarification from this group, I think at least these guys would like to know, I'd like to be able to tell the council, what is that time frame in which, is it 39 years? Is that if we remove these before 39 years, where the park board's paying for it? Or what is that time frame? I think that's what we need to know.
I think that's a day one.
You mean the cost of the removal, or?
Yeah, the cost of removal.
I think in here it's saying that it's an option could be like a 15-year phase out. So if it was to be removed prior to 15 years, someone's going to be on the hook.
Yep.
But maybe another question is, if I heard staff saying correctly, that we would get the credits generated. So let's say that BPU wants to remove it for some reason on the other side. What happens to those credits that we were promised for 39 years?
Lori, can you go to the second page? So staff included in here, so this is from BPU. So they did show the diminishing projected returns over time. So to your point, how long do these last? It's really tough to say over 39 years you're projecting based on an estimate. So you are showing that it is slowing down over time. It's not giving you the same revenue generation over the same amount of time in year 30 as you are in year 1. So it is diminishing in return over that time. Regarding cost, I couldn't tell you what the cost would be to remove these panels. I assume it wouldn't be more than a few $1,000s, whether that could come out of the repair and maintenance fund for the existing budget. That's something that could be, again, directed by park board to staff as we can do that. We would probably have to have an electrician come in to disconnect that from the power source. again, we can be directed to take that out of our existing budget if that's so what the park board would like to do. Or that could be something that could be reflected in the agreement if the park board would like to see BPU cover that cost if they want to be removed. I don't know if the commission would agree to that, but if that was the direction from the park board, that's what we're looking for, that direction. To your point, JD, about the payback period, obviously the commission does not want to invest $32,000 to have them removed in year 2, to potentially lose out on that investment before they see the payback. What that looks like, again, we're looking for direction, what could be included in an agreement that kind of mutually benefits everybody if we move forward with this project. I haven't heard that from this park board yet. Are we willing to invest the time for staff to develop and work with our legal team to develop a draft agreement between not only the park board, but the Public Utilities Commission as well as the Rotary Club, to continue to move this project forward, and what the framework of that agreement is? So that's really what I'm looking for from direction. Is the park board interested in moving this project forward? If so, we will draft this agreement based on what the park board would like to see as facets of that agreement, and we can massage kind of the fine details of that in future meetings. But we're really looking for direction of if you want to move this project forward.
Got it. Thank you, Jesse. Here.
I would like to see it move forward on the basis that BPU pays for everything. I mean, they are very passionate as a board for this project. We would love to have it on our pavilion if there's no cost to the park board or the city. I don't know, just an idea. Unless it's like something where it doesn't, I don't know why we'd want to take it off unless it was something serious that was happening, right? Like kids are crawling up there and doing stuff that we talked about that could happen possibly. I mean, we'd only be removing these things if there was like a danger or it was causing issues, I would think. We're not just going to say like, let's just take those guys down. It's been a couple of years. I mean, right?
Right. Dave.
So here's my fear in all of this, right? You've got the 3 entities that are very different with 3 different pools of money. All of those commissions and board seats are on a rotating basis, this board including. 15 years, 39 years is a very long time. Everyone here will be long gone. All I want to make sure is that everything is in stone as to who is paying what, when. So if these get taken down in year 15, what is the cost to the city in terms of if it's depreciation or if it's the value that we've actually recouped? What is the cost to this board so that when the next board comes up and says, hey, we no longer want those there, staff who may be here, may not be here, can come back and say, here's the agreement that was written, here's what the understanding was, and here's what the cost is going to be to that. So that we're not getting into this wishy-washy shell game of moving money around. That's my only concern with this.
Andrew.
Yeah, I think that's a good 39. I mean, it's a really long time, which is great, right? We want to generate renewable power. I guess I can take a shot at what I would like to see, which is if the panels become a hazard or a blight, BPU pays to remove them. If in the first 15 years the park board just decides voluntarily, we don't like these, we want to get rid of them, park board would pay for the removal. After that, BPU would pay for the removal. And associated credits, right? So like year 4, if they want to recoup the 28,000 plus the tear down expenses, park board would pay for that if we're just like, hey, we don't like it anymore. This is my thought.
Yeah. I think that's a fair, if it is, yeah, if it's a hazard, blight, let's have BPU handle the expenses for the tear down. But if it's at ours because we just aren't feeling it or whatever the excuse might be outside of that, the park board will take on that expense. I think that's a fair assessment. Very good. Do you need a motion for that?
Could I get some clarification on potential payback of the initial investment? Is it 0 payback? If that's how I just want to make sure that that's how staff would direct the draft agreement to come forward.
I
guess I would, I'd say if Right, where the park board is voluntarily choosing to remove them in the first 15 years, we'd pay back based on that prorated table. And then beyond that, nothing.
Oh, okay, the 15-year, okay, so outside of 15 years, we're not giving any prorated amount back.
Yeah, so like year 14, if we're like, hey, we're done, we'd pay 19,635.
Back to
Plus.
BPU, plus the tear down expense. Sure, that does make sense as well, so. All right, yeah, I think, yes. Jesse.
Can I clarify, would it be based on the 15 years of the warranty period? So it'd be 1/15th, so you're looking at potentially, if you tear them down in year 14, that would be about 6.7% of the initial investment. So assuming it's $32,000, it would be 6.7% of $32,000 would be the payback. Is that my understanding? Or are you talking about the return on projected investment?
I was thinking about the return on investment. I guess that would actually be 32,000 minus that number in the table, wouldn't it? Because that's the money you've made back.
Okay.
If it's me, I would say it'd be the initial cost. It'd be prorated based off their initial costs that they put into it.
Not taking into account any revenue that they've received from them,
Well, who's getting that revenue?
BPU. Right?
Yeah, they get all the credits, yep, for their investment.
So it'd be initial dollar amount invested minus any credits received to that date.
Very good.
That is simpler.
That is simpler, yep. Very good. Anything else on that one, Jesse?
Not unless there's any other direction from the park board.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns for Jesse on the solar panels?
So Jesse, so you're gonna craft this, bring it back to both boards, let both boards have their say at it, and then move forward with it?
That is our intention. We'll work with the attorney to draft up an agreement.
Very good. We'll move on to 9A, the discussion of adult softball.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was an item that was requested by the Park Board a little bit earlier this month based on an email. So we've included a few different things in this. The first thing I'll highlight is the postseason meeting that we held last week over at Mill Stadium. We invited our team captains from the summer softball teams, and we essentially included the entire agenda here, as well as the notes that we had taken from that meeting, so you're able to review those in the packet. A handful of different things that we covered in there. We broke down the fees from 2024 so that way they could all see not only just one league, but all of the different leagues, how the league fees were calculated, just to try and let them understand, really the fees are to pay for the expenses of the league. It's really not intended to fund different parts of the parks department. It really is to just kind of fund the league itself. Talked a little bit about the team sideline, addressed the issues that were included in the petition that was spread around in Facebook. Talked a little bit about different potential policy changes that we might be proposing over the winter as well as next year. Same thing with some rule changes that might be coming up. So these are different things that we wanted to make sure that were in place. It may not necessarily have been well-written for this last season, something that we would want to evaluate for potentially next summer, not necessarily this fall. And then also just any other comments and concerns that we'd received throughout the different leagues throughout the summer. And just wanted to address that with all of the different teams while they were there and just get feedback from them based on those comments. So I included all of that here so that the park board was able to see all the different pieces. And again, I included our notes from the from that meeting. I tried to make it a little easier to read. The questions were in regular text, as well as the bold text was the staff response to some of those questions and stuff like that. So there was a lot of very good discussion that was had at that meeting. I know the mayor came in for that meeting. Nick was there. Haley did a fantastic. I was there. I was the one that was mostly taking the notes. Haley was really kind of the one that was leading that meeting. I thought she did a really good job of kind of going through all these different pieces. But I thought it was a really good meeting. We got a lot of really good input from the different teams and the different captains. I think there was just a couple other just individual players specifically, but we got a lot of good input from the different folks that were there. And I think we have a lot of good direction, not only for just things that we're already going to be doing this fall, but things that we really want to address this winter to get ourselves ready to go for next season. But with that, I also did include some of the emails that were requested by the park board for discussion. I did include the email that was sent out to the park board regarding the Blast Facebook page that we were at that time pausing the Facebook page based on some of the inappropriate posts that were posted on there. The city wanted to essentially disconnect from that. We did not want to be affiliated with a Facebook page that had those inappropriate comments. We decided to communicate in a different manner with our different teams. Since then, the Facebook page has been reactivated, but we are no longer affiliated with it. So we are just communicating in different means, mostly through emails. With that, I will look to the park board for discussion on the adult softball program.
Thank you, Jesse, and I do apologize for my absence from that meeting, but it does sound like you guys did a great job, at least lining up some amount of expectations and setting up the groundwork for future discussions and having a little bit more of an open conversation with these types of clubs. So thank you, guys, but what questions do you have for Jesse on the topic? I think we feel pretty confident that we have a direction forward, right?
Yes, sir. I think we addressed a lot of the issues that were not only had occurred throughout the summer, but were also raised out in that postseason meeting. A big part of it was communication that came up through those discussions, and I think we've tried to address a lot of that. Scheduling, I think we've gotten a lot of that resolved, and I think you'll see that even in the fall season. Some of that was obviously inexperience with having done a schedule and utilizing a software that just wasn't capable of handling it very well. But I think we've learned some of those lessons and moved on from that. So we're better suited for fall and moving forward, especially with the new team sideline software that we're going to be utilizing. So we've moved on from some of those issues and kind of learned from some of those lessons. Some of the other stuff we've already kind of addressed, and I think we've talked about things like the lights, and we'll even have some more updates with that, as well as some other parts with like field rakes and stuff like that. So those are all things that, as long as we're having good two-way communication between players and participants and staff, I think we'll be able to address just about anything that comes up.
I have one question. I mean, I saw in the notes about the lack of like representation or making appearances, being at the fields, that type of thing. And the response was, there's concession stand workers, there's umpires, there's the park and rec intern. Has there been any discussion about, well, those are all very valuable members of the team, of the city's team. I think there's probably a need to have someone else there. An intern is an intern. They're still in a learning phase. Umpires are really good at what they do, but let's face it, they're there to umpire the game, and they want to get out of there as fast as they can. They're collecting a check. And concession stand workers they're there for a purpose. If we looked at trying to, I'm not saying to be there every night. That doesn't need to happen. But even if it's us stopping down every once in a while, even if it's, the mayor stopping by, if it's any staff member, Haley, anyone outside of those people, I think that could definitely help.
And I think a tag-on question, or I guess statement, is what is the softball player's duty to self-regulate to some extent and not need a person out there? I think even when I was here, there was a lot of discussion about we want city staff to be more present in City Hall. They're already working 8 hours a day, and the previous recreation coordinator was spending a lot of time out at the fields. That wears on people. That city staff can't spend 60 hours a week being both present in City Hall. And I think that's some of the issues that Haley was probably dealing with. Is we were down an administrative assistant for a long time, so there's no one to necessarily run the window, be there to take reservations for all the other stuff we do, campgrounds, pavilions. I'm sure that has to play in this whole situation. Is city staff has an 8-hour a day job and are likely expected to be present here at City Hall during those 8 hours, and that additional time out at the softball fields is just that, what is the softball players' duties to self-regulate on their own, and what is city staff's expectation for being out at the fields? I think that's a question that I have, and it's something that I struggle with, because these are adult leagues, and there should be some sort of self-regulation that occurs, whether that be through, I don't know if they have their own association or whatever that is, but there needs to be some of that needs to be talked about too, I think.
Dave?
Yeah, I can jump in. Some of that was definitely discussed, and Nick, I'll ask you to speak in a moment if you're comfortable as well, as someone that was there. Yeah, all those things were discussed. I think, with our previous rec specialists, we were spending a lot of time there, and I think the park board was clear that we needed to back off that a little bit. I think maybe we backed off a little too much, but a lot of that was, again, like you said, our staffing at City Hall has been so low this year that we have to take care of everything that we can take care of. But it was a very good conversation. I felt like when we walked away, and Nick, I think you had said this to me as well, very good conversation. We went through issue by issue, but also then allowed people to speak and hear what the concerns they had. And one of those very specific things were, is there a way for either more representation to be there? I would gladly, every once in a while be there on a regular schedule. I think the park board should maybe start investing a little bit of time, one night a month or something, doing something like that. But in terms of having staff there, I think we just need to have consistency to it. And I think that's what people were asking for. What is the consistency to it? And that's definitely something I think we came up with a path moving forward with as well.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I was there. I'm relatively new to the city. I'm not relatively new when it comes to playing softball. I played tons of softball, and it was some of the greatest memories of my younger years. And I think it was very valuable. I left there. I had a chance to meet and visit with a lot of the players, and so often in government, people want to be heard. And I think I kind of picked up on that a lot when I was there visiting with folks. And people like predictability in I want to say schedules, but adult softball isn't a schedule. But people like predictability. Structure is generally good. People perform better in structure. I definitely heard that they would like more staff representation at the fields. I also made a comment that Haley, Jesse, myself, we all have responsibilities at City Hall as well. So we took an action item as a staff to explore how we can be more intentional and predictable with when we might be able to have some presence at the softball fields. I agree with Paul. I do think there's a tremendous amount of value, and it warrants further conversation about softball associations, because I do think that as adults, and I made a comment when I was there at this meeting, it's really hard to legislate morality. It's really hard to legislate character. And when we're dealing with adult sports, there has got to be some responsibility with the members to self-regulate and self-police. So I think it's a mix between the two. We can't have a staff out there continually. It just isn't feasible. But I think we can be more intentional and predictable, and when we can be out there. So we took an action to look into that further. So I expect we'll make some progress on that avenue.
but I do think it needs to be a shared responsibility between staff and the stakeholders, the players themselves.
If I can follow up with that too, I don't think the city is without fault in any of this. I think this was a year of learning. I think there are things we've done well for a long time. There's things we haven't done well for a long time. Somehow we got some of those mixed up a little bit, and we weren't doing the things we've done well for a long time as high of a level as we've been doing. We got to take a step back, reevaluate how those things operate, and figure out how to get to a smooth operation over there. And I think it'll happen. It was a very good meeting, and sometimes it's just people just need to speak, right? I'm a big believer in that. Sometimes we just got to let people speak, and you got to hear some of the issues. And some of them are wildly specific, right? Wildly specific to their small part of that pie that this board is going to be very far removed from. But the more we have connection to that, the more we have an interaction with them, the meetings on twice a year, having them come before us, talking about what the issues are, and then actually letting them see us make some of those changes. That's how we're going to get to a better place with that. But I think Fall League should go much smoother. And then by spring, I think we're going to have a very good program that's up and running. And I think we will have ironed out most of those issues.
Very good. Kara?
Yeah, I think communication, like you guys said, is just going to be, from what I read and what I would think moving forward, just that would be such a huge piece of this, because they maybe wouldn't need to feel like we would need to be at the field as much if they were like, we know that we can send this email, or we know that, oh, Haley's planning, I don't know, a million other things, or not that they need to know exactly what everyone's doing all the time, but just that communication piece. And even as me personally on the board, when I started getting some of these comments, I was like, wait, what? Like I was really confused because, again, I'm not a softball player, and so I didn't know this was happening. And so even from a board perspective, it would be, just communication on things is helpful. But I look forward to this new scheduling, and it sounds like you guys, we'll obviously hear more, but it sounds like there's some good plans in place moving forward.
Thank you, Kara. Andrew?
Yeah, I think this is all really promising. I hope this kind of ends up as like a handbook or some document that's available to all the players in the league. Just kind of what I was seeing on Facebook was a lot of kind of negative reinforcement cycles of, an example, right? Oh, I wish the games weren't rained out today, and then just piling on of frustration around that. And I think if there's a handbook that says, hey, we're going to make a call at 4 p.m. and we're going to use the best information we have at the time, and that's the decision, that at least is clear and transparent. And I hope that can help, because I think Facebook really lends itself to a lot of that negativity, and I'm happy we're out of that as a city. Seeing just some of the really negative things, I think it's not helpful, and if that needs to happen, that needs to happen. But I think this is all really promising, and I think the scheduling software is going to be great. And I don't think I realized how bad Civic Rec was for scheduling, and that's a bummer, because I know we paid a lot to upgrade to that. But yeah, seems, yeah.
Nick?
Oh, sorry.
Just want to piggyback on that. I think that's a great comment. Full disclosure, I'm not a social media person at all. I think it can be an echo chamber. It can be very, very useful, but it can be very, very destructive at the same time. I would say, if I had to summarize what the healthy path going forward is, it's communication, policy, and process. Communication, I said this even at the meeting, I've been working for 35 years, and the number one problem in every organization I've been in is communication, bar none, always, and we can never seem to get it right. Communication, policy, to Andrew's point, people like to have boundaries, people like to have structure. They can agree or disagree, but if the policy is what it is, it kind of takes the oxygen out of a lot of those conversations. That's the policy, we're going to enforce it. And then process to make sure we're doing things consistently and the same way all the time. And people, I think we have a much brighter future if we can stick with those three principles.
Thank you, Nick. And yeah, for me, this program, it's break even now, but the program has a lot of place to grow as well. I mean, we have a lot of fields in our system. We can be utilizing this a lot better. So if we can build a solid foundation on this program can be better. And, again, it ties in with like banner programs and other sponsorship and a lot of activity within our park system. And we just need to find that starting point, that foundation point where we can build off of that. And again, with the self-regulating and things like that for the players and the, potential association and the stakeholders, we can do better. And, I do believe we have a path forward after this. Dave?
Yeah, I just wanted to say too to the softball players that, sometimes all the jargon up here gets lost in the shuffle. We're moving pieces around, and this is a very behind the granite wall, if you will, up here in our high seats. But I think sometimes the softball players just need to hear us say that we support them and that we support these programs and that we want them to be successful. We would not be invested in if we were not. So sometimes I think we need to do a better job up here as well as saying, we support you guys and we support what you're doing, and we just want to make sure that we're figuring out the best way to do that, so.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns for Jesse or Nick? All right, we will move on. Again, thank you guys so much for all that work and coming together with it pretty quick. I would like to think that took a Herculean effort to put some semblance of policy together in a couple days' time after our conversation. So thanks so much. Moving on to 9B, the discussion of the pickleball resurfacing costs. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the request of the Park Board, you requested some cost comparison of what it would cost to resurface like a tennis court, or repurpose a tennis court towards a pickleball court. We actually found a very comparable project that was just recently bid here in spring with Sperry Park here in Wilmer. Very similar to our tennis courts here at Gregory. Maybe not necessarily the poor condition part, but they were resurfacing poor condition surface tennis courts. They elected that they'd rather, instead of moving forward with tennis courts, they wanted to resurface them and put a pickleball surface in its place. Based on the square footage and the square yardage, surprising enough, they were actually very comparable size as well. So that even from a scoping standpoint, it was also a very comparable project in that way. So we were able to take that and kind of draw some inferences of what the approximate cost and kind of apply that towards what could that possibly look like if we wanted to elect towards, let's take a hypothetical resurfacing of Gregory Park tennis courts, north or south. And I just did some rough approximations using that as a framework of taking that exact number and applying it to our courts there. So I did include those calculations. They did not include nets. So based on what I was able to find, the anchored net systems run approximately about $1,000 per net. So I was able to just include that with it. So I do have those numbers in there. I did highlight that I do not recommend resurfacing of the existing pickleball courts in Memorial Park. We do have a challenge right now with trying to maintain good ice in the wintertime. I'm unsure of what the ability would be or the potential for a new pickleball surfacing would be to absorb heat in the wintertime. So we're already having that issue of making good ice in the winter. Would this potentially exacerbate that problem and endanger the potential for pond hockey in wintertime? So I wouldn't recommend looking into resurfacing the pond hockey rink over there. But if you wanted to explore the tennis courts over in Gregory, that's a potential there. But really looking for direction and discussion from the park board regarding how you'd like to handle this information.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse, for finding all of that information, first of all, and lucky that Wilmer has graced us with a project similar to this as well. So I think for me, a lot of that conversation was to make sure that we had a concrete number that we were able to work with so that we could do some community outreach and find some funding within the community, other initiatives and things like that to try to accomplish that. I know we've received a little bit of feedback from the public about wanting to keep the tennis courts via email as well, but just give us a solid foundation of, what is it going to cost for us to resurface these, and then understanding, again, trying to get more of an understanding of utilization as far as tennis in that on those particular of courts as well, but gives us a solid foundation to work from. Did anyone have any questions for Jesse, comments or concerns? Paul?
So, I guess my first, so pickleball is a very hot topic. I'll say that right off the bat, across all the communities that I'm working in right now. City engineer in East Skull Lake, they're having the same discussion right now about needing to refresh their pickleball courts. I guess my first question kind of stems at, do we have enough infrastructure for pickleball players in general? Where if we take away tennis, is that going to be enough to support the community that we have around pickleball? Or should we be looking at this differently to say that, you know, we have tennis courts, they might need to be resurfaced anyways. I don't know what the condition is of those, but do we need to be thinking about this differently and thinking, you know, do we need more pickleball facilities in general? Because I think that's what a lot of cities are struggling with right now. We've heard a lot of good success stories of communities that have raised funds with just through the pickleball community to install pickleball facilities. Walker is a great example. I think they put in a $200,000 pickleball court, and that was all fundraised money from pickleball players. And that was, I think, in a month they raised that amount of money. So, you know, I think the pickleball community in this whole area is very energized right now. And I think, you know, we also need to consider, do we have enough facility or enough existing areas where pickleball could be an opportunity, whether that's resurfacing or creating new pickleball facilities. And it might be, you know, a joint conversation with a lot of neighboring communities, because I know for a fact that a lot of communities that we work with are having the same conversation.
I think part of that was initially the hockey rink that we had maybe half planned to put up in J.C.'s Park, not coming to fruition. So, you know, as another potential facility, more so for pickleball. But anecdotally, from a lot of the community members and pickleball players as well, Memorial Park just isn't enough, and the surface isn't necessarily good for pickleball. Just again, to Jesse's point, I think even the city of Aiken suffers from the same problem. Their initial problem was, you know, they need a specific surface for the ice to form. And so the surface that we have is the surface that we have, and we really can't change it if we want the hockey rink functionality. So kind of going off of that point, yeah, I mean, we asked this question, I think, early last year, what was the utilization for pickleball? How big is it? And, you know, and a lot of our leagues, you know, are stuffed to the brim right now. And the tournaments and the turnout, I mean, there's a lot of local interest. Anecdotally speaking, of course, you know, all we can do is really look at our league registration and things like that for concrete numbers. But right now, yeah, I mean, we are struggling a little bit to field people, even just casually playing. And again, I know there's an agenda item coming up for a very large league, you know, privately run league coming up. So, you know, I guess, yeah, anecdotally, there's a lot of interest and a lot of people saying they can't really get time on the courts, and you know, again, frankly, that the surface itself doesn't lend itself to a competitive nature. So that's kind of what the feedback that I've received from the community. So, JD.
I'm all for adding more pickleball because it is the hot topic. Is that a way that we can bring people to the community to spend money on our businesses if we have the facilities that they can use? Absolutely, that's what we should be doing. More people here instead of other cities. My only concern is I don't feel like we should completely eliminate tennis. I'm not a great tennis player. I've played it a couple times. I think I'm pretty good when I can hit it over the fence. It's not really tennis. But there are people that use Gregory Park for tennis. You know I actually stopped out there earlier today. One of the courts looks brand new. One of them looks like it's probably in need of being replaced soon. So I think this discussion about should we do a large pickleball court there, that might be where the direction should go, but still allow other sports.
Absolutely. And I think, some of the compromise was, I think the North Court's in pretty great shape, comparatively, to the Southern Court. And we do jam a lot more pickleball courts into the Southern one than we would do the Northern one. So in my vision for this, we keep the North as tennis, because that court is a regulation size. And then do the resurfacing, which is kind of, even on a tennis level, needed. On the southern side. And then, again, a lot of the compromises, we could still stick a tennis court inside of the southern courts and still just squeeze in another tennis court if we needed it. But again, that's a question for, usage. Like, do we have a lot of folks filling up 3 tennis courts on a very regular basis? That's a question I don't know. Again, anecdotally, there are folks playing tennis in our park system. Won't deny that one bit, but is it enough to warrant 5 tennis courts? Anecdotally, I don't think so. But is it enough to fill 3? I don't know. I don't know that question. So, or the answer to that question, Paul.
One of the issues that has arisen in some of these other communities is the underlying surface is in too poor of shape to actually get a resurfacer to stick. Jesse, do you know any underlying, I don't know when that South Court was resurfaced. I believe the North Court was done right around 2015, 2016, if I remember right. It's when that rain garden got put in at Gregory at the same time. I believe it's fairly new. But that South Court, I'm not sure when that got put in. I know some communities are dealing with underlying surfaces that are 30, 40 years old, and the resurfacing people come out and they say, ain't gonna stick, sorry. You need a new base surface. And at that point, that's the time for an expansion, because if you're gonna tear it all out anyways, your fencing costs are gonna be expensive or more. But that underlying base surface comes into play when you're talking resurfacing.
Very good.
Do you have any idea when that South Court was put in, Jesse?
No, I don't. I do know the quote in the Wilmer project did address some of that to try and some of the kind of soft bare spots and stuff like that. But to your point, if it was completely deteriorated, I don't think they addressed that specifically to that point. If it was completely unusable, I don't think they would have probably bid the project.
Very good. Any other questions, Kara?
I don't actually have a question, but
Comment, sure.
so I just want to play devil's advocate and just remind everyone that we're looking out for all the parks and all the things. So, looking ahead in the budget, there's $100,000 we have set aside 2028 for playground. That could cover a pickleball court, but it's kind of like how we spend a lot of money on softball sometimes it's pickleball sometimes. So just want to make sure we're budgeting, we don't really have this budgeted, so we'd have to not do something else, or if we do find somebody, obviously, to donate the money, that's even better. But just remembering, and then what happens when pickleball isn't a thing? I love pickleball, so I'm not trying to be anti-pickleball, but what happens when we have all these courts and then pickleball, then we have all kinds of maybe tennis or skating rinks, or I don't know. So just also planning ahead if something changes with the pickleball craze.
Great. Yeah, and I think, the conversations Dave and I have had outside as well there is a lot of excitement in pickleball in general. So I think the avenue first was, of course, getting the estimate, finding out what, if we're going to go to the community and ask them for money, what does that number look like? What's our goal, right? And so setting this baseline and then doing some community outreach to see what we can figure out and, set expectations for the community and the stakeholders. And seeing, what kind of money we can get. Because I do believe we have that particular court budgeted in the 30-year plan, right? I'm not quite sure what year it is, how much money we've got saved up, et cetera, but, by the time this project comes to fruition, maybe we've got a couple $1,000s that we were already going to spend in the maintenance of this particular court that we can utilize along with community money to push the project forward at an earlier date. And I believe it would be a much earlier date because I think I thought it was the late 30s in this budget plan. Yeah. So again, I think next step for myself and anybody else who wants to be a part of this would be to reach out to the community and the stakeholders and find out, where everybody's at and having an understanding of what the concrete, pardon the pun, numbers look like, and realize a project like this would cost at least this amount of money, given the market, so. Dave?
Yeah, the only other thing I want to mention too is that Brainerd is not the end all be all as well. So there are other surfaces out there. So tennis is more covered in this area with the high school and with Forest View and with Baxter. There is more coverage for tennis than there is for pickleball. So I'm not anti-tennis, but I do know that there, just right here, right next to us, there are a bunch of courts that are currently available as well. So tennis does have good coverage. And I would not be anti-tennis by any means, but I do want to see us try and figure out what the solutions could be. I'm surprised by these numbers. These are lower than I expected.
Much lower.
So that's good. The 215,000, that's, I was looking at 150 in my head of what we're looking at for like a brand new structure, which is probably about right, 150, 175. 200 now, probably, yeah, welcome to the current world. But those numbers are at least promising and obtainable.
And if I could just highlight the 215, that includes a few different amenities with it. So like a bike rack and sidewalk. So to your point about the 150 for just the court itself is probably close to that 150.
You said sidewalk, that's $80,000 right there. So there you go.
Very good. So, Andrew?
Yeah, I certainly like the idea of transforming the north court because you get double the capacity that we have today. I think that's a pretty good return on our investment.
Or Southern.
South, what did I say?
North.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, hey, ooh.
You are absolutely incorrect.
100% wrong. South, yes. 3 courts goes into 6. Love that. It seems like a good next step then is to investigate the surface to see if it can be, I think it's acrylic, was it? Right, if we can get that to bond and then have an accurate number for the community. Kind of where I'm leaning.
Very good. Any further comments, questions, or concerns about the pickleball estimate? No public input on this agenda item.
So how are you going to reach out to the people?
Well, I do have your phone number.
What's that?
I do have your phone number, so. Yeah, this is gonna be one of those things, like if we're gonna fund it privately through the community, needs to be, like a private, fundraising and that sort of thing would be something that Dave and I would reach out to the community for, specifically, so.
Maybe good to have a public forum on this.
Yeah, we
when
certainly could.
Come to kind of move forward.
Yeah, we certainly could. Early stages, of course, but yeah, I mean, we need to find the money, and like I said, we need to reach out. And like I said, we've partnered on this a lot already, have a lot of conversations with you already. So those conversations will continue to happen. So between myself or the mayor or anybody else who wants to be involved in trying to community fundraise. So moving on to 9C, the update on Memorial and Lyman P. White utility costs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So another item that Park Board requested of staff to provide an update on utility costs, specifically the splash pad, but we actually had one of our city council members, part of our budgeting process, request Lyman P. White Park. So we actually included that as well. So I did the last trailing 12 months of utility costs for Memorial Park and Lyman P. White Park, and we were able to isolate specifically Memorial Park, the warming house, and splash pad. So I included the utility costs. As you can see, obviously summer is the peak season. Memorial Park, as you can imagine, water is a significant user of the utilities there. It's usually about $4,500 in the peak season there. Lyman P. White Park, the reason for the peak season there is irrigation. Use a ton of the water there. The lighting is all LED, so you're not using a ton of utilities there during the summer. It's mostly just for the irrigation there. So just wanted to quick give a breakdown of the utility costs for those two parks. So in the last 12 months, it's roughly about $33,000 or so for those two parks and just utility costs. Obviously doesn't include any of the other maintenance costs that goes into it too. Those just water and electric.
Very good. Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, those are one of those conversation items when we presented the capital budget. Like one of the, besides labor, the actual increase in costs year over year. So from budgetary requests. And yeah, obviously Lyman P. White being more, or actually being fully functional this last summer, and then the splash pad just getting more usage than it has in previous years, I would guess. Again, anecdotally, that was a significant increase in our overall costs for our budget. So,
I have just a question. Jesse, I know this was talked about right at the beginning of Memorial Park with the splash pad. I think there's ways to like turn that thing back from so much water usage. Because, I mean, if you go out there now, the thing is spraying. I mean, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but it's spraying 30 feet in the air. You know, it's quite a lot of water that goes down the drain. Is that something we can look at and investigate maybe for next year? Is, you know, I think there's ways that you can reduce the amount of water that the splash pad pumps out every time a kid touches that start button.
yeah.
I don't remember what the gallons per minute are, but it becomes significant when you start talking about on hot days, that thing is running probably 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day at a certain GPM. You can, you know, and I think a small adjustment to that splash pad will make a huge difference in the overall bill, and you're not going to take away from the fun being had at the splash pad.
Yeah, we were good contributors on Sunday.
What was that?
We were good contributors on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. We've been all summer too, but I think there is a way to kind of to dial it back, and it won't take away from the
fun,
overall experience.
the fun, yeah. Yeah, I mean, bah humbug, I guess, but.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
It's a big dollar amount.
Oh, Dave, yeah?
Yeah, do we know what the cost of the softball lights are in this as well? Because I'm assuming that's some of it for the June, July, August. We're running lights every night.
I believe those costs are also rolled in with the concession stand, so it'll hard to break the lights themselves apart from the concession stand utility as well.
But I mean, the concession stand is still being used for softball though, so the electricity is still the electricity.
Correct. I can roll all that together too.
Yeah, I just would like to know, just so we can really identify what is what. Because the problem with Memorial as opposed to, you know, Lyman is Lyman, right? It's, you're either having a concert there or we're pumping water into the grass, which beautiful grass, wonderful grass. Some people are saying the best grass. However, Memorial's a little bit tougher because Memorial is very compartmentalized as to what's being used over there. You know, if the stadium is on, there's a cost to that. You know.
If I remember correctly, BPU has the park split into threes: softball, warming house, splash pad, and Millsfield.
Okay, so this is just,
This is just
warming
warming
house?
house splash pad.
okay, yeah. Yeah, we should be
I
mindful
bet you
of that.
95% of that cost is water consumption.
If only we had a water department in the city of Brainerd.
Anywho, any other further comments, questions, or concerns on the utility costs? Just, they're up.
It's great that it's being used.
Yeah, utilization, we
But
love
when I'm
it.
out there, it's a swirl down the drain. I mean, it's pretty incredible how much water. Anecdotally.
Yeah, anecdotally speaking, it's a lot of water. I mean,
Oh,
Andrew, yes.
do we have a record of how many times the button is pushed?
I don't know if it tracks that, does it?
I think there's a counter on there.
I think there is.
I think there is.
And I think it runs for,
I was promised a counter.
I think it's 5 or 10 minutes per time. I don't remember what it is, but there's ways to adjust that too.
You're our millionth button press. Yeah, you can go there with a ribbon. Okay, very good. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the utility costs? All right, we'll move on to 9D, the court rental fee waiver. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff had received a request from Mr. McGregor. He's one of our pickleball league players. They are looking to establish a private pickleball league with a group of about 20 or plus participants on Wednesday nights over at Memorial Park at the rink over there with those 4 courts. Yep, 4 courts. They're looking to utilize the courts for 3 hours through October, so roughly about 8 weeks. His concern was the rate is kind of based on, when you compare that rate, it's equal with other different pickleball courts, like in the metro, very similar to other pickleball courts. But obviously, this isn't exactly the same kind of surface, same kind of nets and stuff like that. So more like a pro grade pickleball court, not what is over at Memorial. But they're looking for a waiver of the costs for that to establish that private league there. Right now, the current leagues are on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we wouldn't have any conflict with the schedule. And I think we ended up just moving one of those because we weren't able to fill the other one. When we did the calculation, there's about $2,400 in potential revenue. Should they still be interested if we don't waive the fees here? But staff is recommending that we waive the court rental fees for this request.
Thank you, Jesse. I think my initial, this was the conversation we had last time. Obviously, we waived for the nonprofit. I think one of that conversation is that I did kind of want to have a league rate, like an all-encompassing league rate, because I do, me personally, I do think $25 per court per hour is still a lot of money for what we have to offer within the system. And, I don't mind private leagues one bit. I think, that's something that when we talk to stakeholders and letting the players be responsible for their own league, I'm all for it. I am for waiving this particular league's rental fees this time around. But I do want, in the future, if we want to have some private leagues and rental usage and have specific timeframes, I just maybe like a discounted league rate because we can count on them to be there, et cetera, kind of that loyalty program if you're going to operate a league. I think that's something that I would like to see in the future, instead of being like, okay, you're going to be here for 3 hours, 8 days, that sort of thing. Yes, I just like to see more of a league rate if we're going to have a night organized play out there.
Is it like a nightly type of rental or like a per day that the league is running, or instead of like a per hour,
Right. Yeah. No. And the details of that probably need to be ironed out a little bit. But in this particular instance, again, $2,400, it is a significant amount of money if you're going to be playing in a league. But 20 people, $2,400. I guess it's reasonable. But when you look at the sustainability of something like this, and putting a little faith and being able to maybe commit to improvements when we do a league rate, things like that. I think I would just prefer in the future we kind of come up with something, right? Like, this is the amount of time we're going to allocate, this often, these days, et cetera, and just have kind of like a standard discount or discounted rate if you're booking, a league's worth of time. So, Dave.
Yeah, I'd like to see us handle this similar to the way we do baseball associations, something along those lines, if we could, because that's a very similar thing, a nightly, weekly thing that's happening. And although it's not a league per se, it is consistently being utilized by them. So I'd like us to treat the two very similar.
And again, for the promotion and growth of the program, if we do have more options, people are going to want it further and more. And we just need to have some consistency when it comes to this sort of thing. Obviously, we don't want to open the floodgates on the waiving of rental fees, but we do need to find a sustainable way for people to develop private time and have consistency in this and be able to utilize the courts at a decent rate so they can just be used.
My only concern is precedent.
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing? Because we're having discussions about fees with other things, and we say this rental of the field, or rental of this, or rental of that is included. What precedent is this doing when, I think originally when we wanted to do a fall league, we wanted 2 more leagues, and now we're gonna waive a fee for this when we couldn't fill the original 4 nights or 4 leagues of pickleball, so we went to 2. And now we're gonna waive fees for a private league, you know, so is that kinda, are we losing potential revenue? Are we losing revenue from the leagues? It's not that I don't wanna see pickleball everywhere. I may or may not agree with the price of the rental, but I just worry about a precedent here.
Jesse, did you have a comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So I know it comes up every fall that we establish our fees and rates for the following year. We do the same thing for campground, pavilions, field rates. I don't believe we've changed the field rates since I have been here, up or down. So this can be something, to your point about establishing precedents. Even though if you waive the rental fees here, we could be establishing fees for 2025 moving forward. The discussion regarding having league rates, that is something that also came up during the adult softball postseason meeting. That is something that's rolled into their league fees, is rental of the softball fields. Do we establish a specific rate for the softball fields? Do we establish different types of league rates? So that is something that we can bring up as part of that discussion of establishing fee schedules for different leagues or all of the leagues and rentals of those facilities specifically.
And, you know, and to that point, a lot of our program and stuff like that is wrapped up in administrative and labor. You know, less so much the actual renting of the facilities and usage of the facilities, specifically in softball, right? So, I mean, looking at it and just saying, okay, you guys run your own league, as the association will rent them out to you, you know, that's, you know, to our benefit, I think, you know, again, privately run, you know, associations or leagues, you know, that have just the understanding, again, we have a set of policies and procedures that you need to follow if you're going to be a private league inside of the city and utilize this league rate. But, you know, we can establish something that's a little bit more, you know, a little bit more congruent with what we're trying to accomplish in that. And again, I don't know what those rates look like specifically. Again, you know, I do know that the $25 rate is like a metro, like good, you know, like competitive quality surface type pickleball court rental. So again, I don't personally agree with it, but yeah, we can make those adjustments. You know, but in the meantime, you know, are we just full waiving this? I mean, do you want to see maybe just a reduction in cost? You know, I'm open to that as well.
I think I have one other question with it. Has there been any discussion with staff and the private league as to why they want to do a private league? I mean, could this be a learning opportunity? Is there something that we're not seeing that we should be doing differently to better serve the citizens? Or is it just that the nights that we picked didn't work with their schedule? You know, I think, is there something we can learn from it also?
We haven't engaged them in that way. I think the other comment that I've received was that they have a different set of rules that they're using. But beyond that, I haven't inquired to that level.
Very good. We'll start with Kara.
Look this way, so.
Yeah, right, finally, yeah.
Okay, for this particular request, I do not feel like we should waive it. I mean, maybe half, but we are just previously talked about how we want to have pickleball courts, and we have this demand for pickleball, and now we're, like, just the whole cost of it, there's going to be staff time, I'm sure, probably not a lot. I don't know, Jesse, maybe you can speak to that, but I don't know if it, like, rains, and they have to clean the leaves up. Like, I don't know what kind of cleaning they do, but, like, there's going to be some time from staff involved. Maybe we could put this money towards, I don't know, a fund. I just feel like we can't just keep not having people pay, because again, it's the whole, like, how is that fair to the next person? I do think for the future, league fees for pickleball would be a smart idea, but we chose $25 at some point. I don't know if we did that based on the surfacing or however we chose that, but we all agreed on that a little while ago, and now we're like, oh, maybe that's not what we want to do because the surf isn't good enough. Well, I don't know, we voted on it earlier in the year, so I feel like we have to like follow through with or give them half price or something, but that's my opinion.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, the thing that's kind of standing out to me is like this is exclusive use of that facility for 3 hours, and to say that's free when we've just talked about everybody in the community wants to play pickleball. But by the way, 3 hours once a week, you can't at Memorial. I think feels a little gross when it is a private league, which I think is great. But to kind of have that just be, yep, the whole facility is in use, I think there should be a cost to that. Surfacing aside, right? I could be swayed on some amount, but I think there should be a cost to that for sure. I guess my other question is, do we know, Jesse, what the league is charging players?
So our current league rate was $50 per player, I believe. I believe it was $50 per player. It's pretty minimal from a staff perspective. I do know that we supply pickleballs for the league. And again, there's just minimal staff that goes into it. Obviously, the surface needs very minimal work, maybe potentially paint every once in a while, but it's pretty minimal even at that point. Maintenance of the nets whenever needed. But from that perspective, it's pretty low.
Sorry, I meant the private league. Do we know what they're charging?
No, they have not told us that. Obviously, they were more concerned at $2,400. It's, I think, just using the number of 20, it's $120 per person. That would be quite a bit more than what we're charging for our public league.
Yes, I do agree. I guess my other concern here is if we waive the fees, are we subsidizing a private business by saying, hey, you charge players $50, but the courts are free, and so their costs are essentially zero?
I think
feels gross.
my opinion is that we equate it to if there's 20 players, if we charge 50 for our leagues, we say that the rental fees are $1,000. I mean, I think that is at least justifiable. That's what we charge for our city-run leagues, and it's a justifiable, rental expense. That's what we would be receiving if we were to run the league.
Sure. Dave, you
Yeah,
had-
my only comment is just a reminder that your policy is not to waive fees. So you have set that policy.
Very good.
Yeah, I like Paul's idea, and I definitely want to reevaluate this with our fees November, December, whenever we do that. Especially if we're looking at Gregory and maybe that's a better surface and this is a inferior surface.
Further comments, questions, or concerns on the waiving of the fees? All right, we'll be looking for a motion for this.
I would move to approve the private league for a cost of $1,000.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or concerns on the motion itself? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We will let them play for $1,000. And then the newly added 9E, the trespassing, and we'll go to Jesse for that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our police chief requested this item, so I will present on his behalf. We have recently had some issues over in Gregory Park with a few individuals, one specifically, but 3 individuals more recently. They have been continually occupying Gregory Park, kind of in that pavilion area. The names are Tony Ray, Bryce Johnson, and Timothy Cooper. Kind of in that pavilion area. They have a history of disturbing others in the park and leaving trash behind. We actually recently had a patron that had reserved the pavilion had an unfortunate experience there with their reservation. Didn't go very well. They had to kind of clean up after them as part of their reservation, so it didn't go very well. So this was not an isolated incident. This is continuing. We use you'll probably see it later on in our maintenance report. We've also had to repair some light damages in that same pavilion because of people ripping light fixtures out of that pavilion because of this. So unfortunately today, all three of them were engaged with a mutual physical fight with each other underneath that pavilion until another park patron actually came and attempted to break up the fight. Police were dispatched to the area, and all three individuals were criminally charged with disorderly conduct for fighting in public. Our police chief is requesting if the park board would approve staff to work with our legal department to work through the process to have those three individuals trespassed from our parks system.
Thank you, Jesse. Any questions, comments, or concerns on the trespassing?
We're talking about all three, not just one, right?
All three, correct. Yep.
We have the power to do that. I'm like, is that something, yes?
It gives the police department the right to arrest, I think, if they were to enter the park system.
Do we know their history? Is there mental illness? Is there like, I mean, I don't know.
My understanding is that it's been done once before, and it was under the action of the park board. Again, we would request not only approval from the park board, but then we would start working with their legal team, probably our prosecuting attorney, of what that would look like. But I think having the direction from the park board helps support that direction for staff to work with our attorneys.
Once before, huh? Yeah.
You know, earlier we just talked about wanting our softball participants to regulate themselves, act appropriately in the parks. If we have continuous problems with people not doing that, then if it's affecting other citizens' use of the park, then that has become a problem. And I am under the belief that if you don't do something about it, you've just encouraged that behavior to continue. I would be in support of it.
I'll make a motion to trespass those three individuals per the police chief's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion further on the motion? Andrew?
I guess my question is, if we know they're littering and destroying property, can't we charge them with those things to have them removed from the park?
I believe there's violations of the city code, but I don't believe that goes to trespassing. I think there's a fine based on the violations of the city code. But going through, if we can have them trespass, we could have them removed from the park.
It's tough on me because, you know, this kind of harkens back to the alcohol in the parks discussion, right? Because it's still illegal to be disorderly in the park system. It's still illegal to destroy public property. It's still illegal for them to do the things that they're doing inside of the park system. It's still illegal for them to do that. And so for me, you know, it was the same thing with drinking in the park system, right? It was still illegal for you to be drunk in the park system. But on top of that, it's illegal for you to drink in the park system. It just seems doubly that way. So, like, it's what they've done is already illegal. So are we deterring them from, we're just saying we just don't want you in the park system anymore. That's what we're saying. And for indefinitely, is that how it works? Or?
I think that is the request of the police chief.
Interesting. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, I guess maybe my discomfort is more that it feels sort of extrajudicial that, like, I trust our police chief, but also for us 2 minutes ago, having never heard these three folks' names, to be like, yeah, and you can never go to Gregory Park again in your life, with zero kind of, not that this needs to be a trial, but like any discussion or process involved feels pretty gross to me. I guess I think I would vote against this as it's currently offered, but if we could put a time limit, I would be more interested in that. It just feels like a very drastic measure. Like, I agree it needs to stop. But to say, for the rest of your life, you can't go to this park because the park board heard about your conduct for 5 minutes one day, feels like not what we're all up here to do. So that's where I'm at.
I don't necessarily know if it's our responsibility to trespass people either, but I mean, if we're going to do it, maybe it's a 5-year trespass. Honestly, what was it indefinite in the last situation as well?
I am unsure.
Unsure.
Yeah, I was not present for that.
I don't think their concerns are against Gregory Park, so I feel like it would have to be like, again, we just heard about this, but like, they need to get help for what's really wrong or something. But again, this is like a lot to put on us, and I know it's supposed to probably just be this like 2-minute thing, but I don't feel comfortable making this decision for someone's, I get it, it's just a park. It's not like they're going to jail, but maybe they will, I don't know.
This is a tough one.
I
I'm
think
not,
maybe we
Our hearts are too
need
big.
some more explanation. Maybe the police chief needs to come in and talk to us about what this means. I mean,
I just feel like they have enough to charge these guys already, you know? I mean, they're gonna be fined for their misconduct. I mean,
As I understand it, they're already being criminally charged for the fighting in public issue. So they were arrested this afternoon. But this isn't the first incident that he has run into with these folks. They've been addressed with the police department in the past at this park repeatedly, most recently.
all right. Andrew.
Maybe an alternative. I'd be interested in reviewing a draft of the trespass order at our next meeting, and maybe if we could also have the police chief, that would be nice. But yeah, I think I'm not comfortable kind of approving that today.
I don't necessarily think I am either, just given that, I mean, especially a lifetime ban on anything, you know, people do change. So even if they are hooligans now, 5 years from now, maybe they're different people and they should have access to, as tax-paying citizens, our park system. So I'm not sure if I think it's the indefinite side of things, the finite, like the absolute never again will you set foot in the city of Brainerd's park system again, I think I'm having an issue with. And again, I don't know what the precedent is, you know, I mean, this is the second time this will ever happen. So I'm not sure that I'm in for that.
How do we not kick the can down the road, though? Because we're giving them 4 more weeks of full access to the park system to continue to cost money to the taxpayers.
Well, they were arrested today, so.
They were arrested, but they've also had issues in the past with law enforcement, and that hasn't deterred them.
Yeah.
They've given them opportunities, and their actions have yet to change. So if we continue to just kick the can down the road, you know, I think we were all appointed to this board sometimes to make tough decisions. Sometimes it gets a little uncomfortable, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. Fear is okay. But is there a way to get an answer prior to 4 weeks from now about if a trespass is lifetime or if it's a set amount? I wish I could remember from my prior experience, but I cannot remember if there is a year range on that.
Any thoughts, Dave?
You look like you want to say something.
Mayor, I am simply here to make sure that you guys are following your own set policies. And that the city council trusts in you, your decision-making. But this, to answer your question, this does fall into your jurisdiction. This is a park situation, so this falls under your jurisdiction in terms of whether or not the trespassing is.
I don't think we're necessarily trying to pass the buck on to somebody else for responsibility, right? I think it is a manner of, do you lifetime ban somebody for, you know, again, relatively stupid mistakes? Again, we don't know the extent of any of their misconduct, like actually the extent of their misconduct. Like, did they break any of each other's bones? Or are they just a couple of goofballs screwing around in the park system? You know, we don't actually know that. It's just that there was an incident at the park that involved another citizen, and these guys were arrested for it.
Well, I know that from my experience sitting in Jesse's shoes, the police department does not take this trespass issue lightly.
Sure.
And that's why it has only come up once before in the past.
Sure.
And so I'm kind of on the same page as JD here. There's a reason why the police chief is recommending this, and it's obviously due to the historical nature of these individuals' conduct in our park system. Whether that's, we spend a lot of time in Gregory taking care of vandalism, garbage, all these things that come about with people doing nefarious things in our parks. And, speaking, I think, in support of the motion that JD and I made, police chief, they take these situations very seriously. And there's a reason why it's only occurred one time in the past.
Fair enough. I believe Jesse's got. Yep.
We have the chief of police on the phone, if you don't mind.
You bet.
Chief, if you want to go ahead and jump on.
Yep, I can hear you, Jesse.
Okay, can you kind of go through, what I'm hearing from some of the park board is, some of the concern is the time frame on the potential trespass order, as well as all parks versus one park, and just the string of incidents with these three individuals. If you could just kind of elaborate some of that.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity. And I apologize. I'm no longer at work and not in front of my computer, so I can't give the detailed statistical data. But what I can say is the three individuals we had an incident with today, we have been, I guess, monitoring their activities within the park and within the city for some time. On a daily basis, they are spending a significant amount of their days at the Gregory Park in the gazebo. We have had instances, reports of confrontations between some of these individuals and other people in the public. None of these altercations have necessarily become a criminal matter. However, concerns about their conduct and being disruptive to some of the other park goers. Today, we had a report of a physical fight amongst these three individuals, and I appreciate the camera that you have in your Gregory Park, because it was very instrumental in helping us identify what took place. And to sum it up, these three individuals were once again just hanging out in the gazebo area there, and for reasons unbeknownst to me, they all three engaged in a physical fight that was sustained for a period of time until an unknown individual that was strolling through the park had saw what was going on, went over and attempted to break up the fight, and subsequently the fight did end. So I had reached out to Jesse to bring it to his attention and to bring it to all of your attentions. As far as a couple of the questions asked was as far as the duration. Now, Minnesota state statute puts a maximum time limit of 1 year on a criminal trespass. It could be an option for the board if they decided on a shorter amount of time. It's just a matter of communicating that to the police department, and after that amount of time, we would no longer enforce any criminal trespass. So really the board could implement that up until for a year's time. As far as this park versus every park, I would, I guess, leave that up to the board's decision. My only concern to this point that I can articulate has been their conduct within Gregory Park. I'm not aware of any other issues in any other parks. So if a trespass was just applied to Gregory Park, I think that would be a reasonable place to start.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's plenty of clarification for us. That really helps me on this, is that 1 year's the maximum. Now I'm certainly in favor of a trespass for this, for all parks, the entire system, for 1 year. Yep. Yeah, like I said, I just don't like the indefinite nature, but if we are maxed out at a year, it's a year. I'm on board.
So just so we can be clear, can we please modify the motion so that it fits that language?
Want to make that modification?
Yep.
Yeah, I would amend it that it's to all parks for a duration of 1 year.
I'll second that modification.
Motion and a second on the amended motion. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. They are trespassed. We will move on to the public forum. We'll open it at 5:35. This is a time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the board, and we may impose time limits. Oh, Jesse?
I believe we have one more item, the event application.
Oh, yeah, there, sorry, my agenda was missing those, on the bottom of
Yeah, I
them.
think
So,
the agenda, yeah.
my apologies. Let's, not open the public forum and move on to, 9F. Since I inserted a 9E.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next item is is an event application for the concert in the park. Attached is an event application for Thursday, September 26th from 5 to 9 in Lyman Pete White Park. Consists of a concert at the amphitheater with sound equipment. Hosted by the Brainerd Community Action, partnering with Jack Pine for serving beverages during the event. They're required to obtain a certificate of insurance, obtain a temporary liquor license, and meet the requirements set forth in the City Code Section 1200.17. One thing that we also included in here, because this has just been an issue in the past, just reminding the performers over at Lyman P. White Park to just consider their power loading as they utilize the power banks. We just had issues in the past of folks overloading one power bank, so we just want to make sure that those folks remember that. So staff is recommending approval of the attached application with the included conditions within.
Thank you, Jesse. Comments, questions, or concerns on the event application? Head shaking.
I'll make a motion to approve the event application with the listed conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Event application approved. Moving on to now 9F?
9G.
9G. All right, very good. Yep, 9G. The postseason letter from the Ski Loons, Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just informational. This is a letter, a postseason letter from the Ski Loons received. Wanted to include this for the park board for your consideration at the conclusion of their season. I believe they had a couple last practices, but their show dates have concluded. I think August 24th was their last show, if I remember correctly, but I can't recall right off the top of my head. They will be scheduling a postseason meeting with the Lake Association. We will get a date confirmed within a week of that meeting. We will share that date with the park board when that's available.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And honestly, these types of things being attached and having this type of information, that dialogue that we just really haven't had between, other organizations and things like that, it's really nice to have those attached. Dave, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I had a great conversation with Chris Dens. Said everything went very well this year in terms of the interactions on the lake. The only request that he forwarded to me was potential of just looking at makeup dates. As someone that has put on events this year, a lot of rain this summer, a lot of rain. So there's just a little language in there about that type of thing. But in terms of just a face-to-face with Chris, great feedback on how this year went. So
Yeah, and I'll certainly be looking forward to attending the postseason meeting between the association and the organization as well. So again, happy to see, at least anecdotally, that everything went very smooth this season. So we'll look forward to the feedback that we receive. Any comments, questions, or concerns on the letter from the Ski-Loons?
No.
Alrighty, very good. Now, the long-awaited public forum. We'll open it actually at 5:39. It's time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the board, and we may impose time limits. If there is anybody in the audience going once. Well, if it's not related to the resurfacing of the courts, you are allowed to speak.
So, Kevin Ruin.
Oh, yeah, name and address for us.
I'm just Kevin Ruin, a citizen of Brainerd. How about that?
Yeah, very good.
And we've spoken, Jonathan, and we've spoken Mayor Dave, about the interest in pickleball. And we all know today there's a lot of interest. Pickleball up, tennis down. So we've all, I think, agreed that that's what's going on. So my question to you, and we spoke, Mayor Dave, about funding mechanisms. So we do have a group meeting Thursday out at Memorial at 10:30 to talk about forming an association, because there's different groups out there. So there's Baxter people, there's East Shore people. I mean, they're out there, and we've had some nice discussions. So we'd like some direction on what you expect from the citizens or from the pickleball players on some fundraising. And Mayor Dave, you said that's as community service or in your area, community development, you had some ideas. So give us direction, please. There's some other members here of what do we need to keep the momentum going? That's the question.
So, conversation about fundraising, just overall about pickleball, I guess, it's a little more your expertise. Like what would,
I think we need some more definition on what this, like getting back to my original point, do we use I think the park board needs to have more discussion on what are we actually fundraising for? What park is it in? What are we doing? Because I think that's the starting point, so that staff has the ability to go and look at costs to build new courts, resurface the existing, do what we need to do to support pickleball players, figure out what that cost is so that we can give direction to these newly formed association of what the Brainerd Park Board would like to see regarding pickleball. And that way we have a number, and whether it's part budget, part fundraising, whatever that is, the city has a process for budgeting. It takes a while. Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's start having these discussions at a park board level. And from that point, we know what the costs are, we know what the dollar figure is, and what the fundraising aspect of that should be. Because I think it's so early on at this stage that I don't think anyone could just say, let's go resurface the south court and make them own the pickleball and let's go. I don't think that's a feasible.
Okay, when I've had these discussions to find out the process, okay, because it's a process. We get that, we know that, but we understand, what we talked about is, a minimal approach. Long-term, I'm understanding, it's not even, if we did it right today, it won't even be in the 2025 budget, okay? So we know that. So that's a whole different animal for dedicated pickleball courts. So we need, in my discussions that I've had with some people in this room, some type of a interim plan, and that's what we had. We upped it at $38,000. It seems to be not an insurmountable amount, but if that would drag on for not even make next year's. I mean, when we one time talked, we thought if it's small enough, we could do it this fall yet. But I'm not hearing that at all, that anything's going to move that quickly, okay? So I guess we need to know then, do we go for the home run, or are we just going to go for a single or a double now? I mean, as to your point, you didn't say it as fad, but right now, pickleball's hot, so we have to jump on what's hot right now. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. This is what's going on now, and that's what we should address. These are the citizens of Brainerd, and we want to enjoy our parks. As we talked about fees and fees. We pay taxes. We all pay taxes. So I guess we just need direction, and you say you want to reach out. So who are you gonna reach out to and when, I guess is a question we'd have. So we know we got momentum going, how we keep the momentum going. If anybody can address that.
So I'll throw the other hat on from a community action standpoint. I would gladly come meet with you guys on Thursday. And then we can talk about the association side of things and what that potentially could look like for fundraising.
Yeah, yep.
If you come to the park board with a stack of dollars, the park board's not gonna tell you to get lost. So far that I've met you guys, unless it's solar, they'll tell you get lost then.
Sure. Fair enough.
However, I would gladly at 10:30 on Thursday come meet with you guys and then I can kind of share some of my advice for working with these guys, but also from the other side, from the private sector. In what
You've
we
been
could
very
potentially
helpful.
do.
So I'll
Yeah.
text you, Mayor Dave.
Absolutely.
So, it's 10:30 at Memorial. I assume it's gonna be in the hockey rink or right around that facility, and I'll send you the same message. John, you've been very helpful to us. So if that's the starting point, then
Because, I mean, we like within the system itself, we need to decide
sure it's right.
if this is the right fit. It does seem, I mean, again, from my perspective, a no-brainer, but, is there room for a bigger facility? What does it look like, right? How much
You're right.
pickleball is being played within the system, and what do we really need? Because is 6 enough? I mean, that's a question.
If we're gonna address an issue,
Right.
I'd like to address it right
Right.
and figure out what that is.
So-
I think that's the discussion that needs to be had.
Well, addressing it right is dedicated courts, but that's 2026 or 2027. I mean, the time is now.
2 years out on that. So, and that's coming from the city to them. So just to be clear, the city has been very clear to this park board, your budgeting process is 2 years. If you think pickleball is the answer, you're 2 years away for anything gigantic like that. So if it's fundraised dollars, that's a different scenario. But when we're looking at directly from the budget, and I can already say that I've said to some of the board members here, council's probably going to be asking you to make a reduce in your ask this year anyways. That's just where we're going to be. Our budget is in a state where we've got to start finding dollars to be removed. But there are other alternatives to figuring that out. So I think we can figure something out.
Yeah, so we'll work on that. Well, Dave, specifically, if I can attend, I will most certainly be there. And then as a board, again, creative ideas on top of, the one that I think that is glaring and obvious, and finding some more information, I guess, on tennis usage, of course, but finding maybe, again, other alternatives for maybe even a bigger home run style project. So, like I said, always appreciate the enthusiasm. So that's the one thing. Yeah, step one, keep the enthusiasm because I appreciate it a ton, and we've had a lot of great conversations about this. And then step two, getting the association together and having a lot of conversations. So
Thank you very much for your time.
thank you so much.
Okay.
Any other folks for the public forum? Yeah, come on up. Name and address for us.
Kevin Hall in Fort Slam and Baxter. But we're very involved in pickleball throughout the different communities in the area. And I keep hearing back from like Mission Lake and Ironton. Walker, I believe, also got in on some grant money that's out there that the state has through the COVID Act or something like that. They got a bunch of money in. And I don't know if that's a loophole or how they're doing it, but it's getting people outside, getting exercise and all that. And my question is, does the board or somebody on the city staff look into a possible grant?
I think it's a possibility. So just, from our standpoint, we did have ARPA dollars. They're called American Rescue Plan. We have 3 projects ongoing right now in 3 parks that utilize those ARPA dollars.
Okay.
But yes, I think, we could have staff look at grant opportunities for.
Yeah, I don't think that's anytime we try to, start a project up, in any way, shape, or form, it's literally the first thing we do is try to find some free money. So, again, ongoing conversations, but we actually are utilizing those dollars inside of the park system. Literally right now, I believe those sidewalks were dug up in Lum Park at this point in time. So we are utilizing those dollars, that they're talking about. But the grant situation is something that we always.
This is going outside of Minnesota where I do some wintering down south. I was told there that they're getting money through the tennis association. That the American Tennis Association has funds that they use towards pickleball.
And I think, for the association, once it's formed and everything, that would be something the association could explore on a private fundraising type
Oh, I
level.
think we're going to get a good thing going.
I think so too. I think it's going to be, I think the dollars are going to roll in, but, that's something privately the association could explore.
And then
kind of the same with
I don't
the
know
solar
if you've
project.
seen how, like Cross Lake has theirs put together.
Yeah, it's
So they
very
have
nice.
members that can play in the morning. It's dedicated to the members, then it's open play
Yeah,
then for the
it's a
rest of the day.
very nice
So
facility,
it's a
for
nice
sure,
setup,
so.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, appreciate you guys, all the enthusiasm, again, getting butts and seats and feet on the court. So very important to us. Last call for the public forum. And we will close it at 5:49 PM and move on to staff reports, the recreation and maintenance report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a few different items here, so I'll start with the recreation side. So talking a little bit about the movie in the park, so we did have that on Saturday. My understanding it was, it turned out pretty well. It took a little bit to get it set up. Unfortunately, that big screen is very tough, even with just a slight breeze. Haley was lucky enough that she was able to get it up and running, and it turned out well. My understanding it was somewhere in the realm of 70 to 85-ish people attended the movie, so it was pretty well attended. We were able to sell some popcorn. We had Krabby Dale's come out as a food truck vendor, so they were out there. Thought it seemed like the movie was pretty well attended, at least from even my driving by after it had started. So we're looking at potentially 2 to 3 additional movies between September and October. So those dates are coming up yet. So from an adult sports standpoint, summer softball is pretty much wrapped up with the exception of MS2 is still wrapping up their tournaments this week and I think next week. They were the ones that were delayed by rain quite a bit this summer. So they are still wrapping up. But we are going to also get started into some of our fall sports just because we don't want to get too far into the fall before a lot of those get kicked off. So kind of a lot of shuffling and shifting. So Haley's been really juggling a lot of those schedules and stuff like that. But she, like I mentioned, she's really worked with a lot of the teams on getting the schedules right for fall, the fall leagues, working with both her network as well as the teams in those leagues. So looking for a pretty successful season this year for fall season. Going into maintenance, there's just a few different things I wanted to highlight. I know Park Member Shipe, you had a question regarding the garbage cans in Gregory and how they had kind of moved out to the exterior of the park. That is something that Troy and I had a discussion on that was kind of intentional to try and avoid as much vehicle access into the park. So that was why the trash cans were kind of relocated towards the exterior of the park, is try to minimize that. Obviously, if we have more like a trash issue, we may have to reevaluate that. As far as I can tell, we're not having that kind of an issue. So we'll continue to do that, but that was the intent, is to try and limit that. So that was why those were moved out there. Memorial Park field lights, I know this kind of came up as a discussion. So we had more discussions regarding what the cause was, because I know this came up in some of the concerns of softball players. And so the existing lights out there, I believe it was field 2, or I can't remember. I think it was field 2. It might have been field 1 that the chunk of lights had burnt out. And talking with Troy, it was very odd that how many had went out all at once. So we had about, I believe, 4 on hand. We weren't expecting the dozen or so to go off all at once. In talking with him, he's suspect that it might have been like a lightning strike that would have caused them to burn out. There's an inside filament and an outside filament. For all of them, it seemed like the outside filament, I believe, burnt out, which is also an odd way for them to burn out. So that's why he's also suspecting that it might have been a lightning strike. Unfortunately, we just didn't have that many lights on hand. The other part of that is getting an electrician and a lift lined up at the same time. We used to be able to utilize the fire department ladder truck. We can't do that anymore. With their new ladder truck, it has to be fully loaded, and we can't bring those out into the fields fully loaded. It would not only damage the field, damage the irrigation. So we do have to wait for an available rental lift that's tall enough to reach those lights. So that was some of our challenges with the lights, but it is something that we're going to try and reflect in policy, especially from a safety aspect, is, how much is too much before we can't utilize those fields anymore. So that is something that we learned through this season too, is we want to make sure that that's reflected as well. But some other things that are in the maintenance list that, one thing specifically that came out of the discussion from a concern from softball players was we put wall guards, stainless steel wall guards under the hand dryers in the bathrooms over by the softball fields. Obviously, with painted walls, it's a lot tougher. Once that egg line gets in there, it's very tough to clean that off. By putting those stainless steel plates, that should be a little easier for us to maintain that rather than just repainting it every so often. So stainless steel plates were put in there. CTC did complete putting in new fiber bores for security cameras over at Kiwanis, which will also tie in with the College Drive Bridge, Memorial Park, and Lyman P. White Park. We may not have the funds to do new security cameras at all three parks. We'll prioritize Kiwanis. That was kind of always, that and the bridge were always kind of the top priority. Memorial Park, we wanted to get those upgraded as well with the new fiber, and then followed with Lyman P. White. We'll get new cameras there as well. Like I mentioned, just depends on how much the budget will go. We just have to do some more electrical at the bridge, so there's some expense there as well. Some other maintenance items I wanted to highlight. The light lenses at Lyman P. White Park, specifically the ones in the seating area. There was a couple that were, I think, kicked out. They are incredibly expensive. If my memory serves me correctly, they are about $250 per light, not including staff time to reinstall them, and they are also difficult to reinstall. So those are not cheap lights. The bike repair station over at Lyman P. White Park was also recently fixed. Not only the bike repair station, but the air pump started leaking, as well as some vandalism started stripping some of the tools off of it. So that might be something that our maintenance staff is going to have to combat and continue to work on. We'll do our best to try and keep it up, but obviously that's a very expensive thing. As much as we can try and avoid obviously replacing it, we'll try and continue to repair it as best we can. And then another thing that came up from not only comments from softball players, but it also came up in our postseason meeting. Something we addressed with Troy, our maintenance supervisor, was the turf divot behind second base on field 2. They said that there was kind of a low space there. It is something that we are aware of. There's just no way that we can do it currently. Obviously, we're using those fields right now. The only way would be to take that field offline completely, and we just can't do that with how many teams we have playing right now. So it is something that we're going to eye for potentially a fall project after the season concludes. We'll probably put down like winter seed and hope that we get a really good spring weather season, that the grass can grow really well and it's ready to go for summer season next year. With that, I do have some updates on a project standpoint. The Parks ARPA projects that Paul brought up, we are anticipating those are going to get kicked off after Labor Day, likely starting with JC's, which will work out obviously in our favor because the parks will have slowed down quite a bit in usage. One thing I was anticipating potentially adding onto the agenda, unfortunately, I did not get the final numbers from the contractor. The water hookup fixtures over at the campground weren't well specified in the plans. So the contractor bid a certain type of fixture. They were like flush mounted, almost like an irrigation box, but they had like the flip cover box, like you would think with an irrigation with a key that would turn it on and off. Obviously, it's not going to be very good for an RV to hook up into and turn on and off. So that is something that we ask them to change and adjust. That comes with an additional cost, a little over $600 per fixture. We do have some money in our contingency, as we discussed kind of a couple meetings ago when we talked about a few different additional items. So we do have some money in contingency to address that. But looking at proper hydrants that have backflow preventers, I can't remember what the other details are. The sanitary yard hydrants is really what they're designed specifically for campgrounds. And I believe the ones that we selected were ADA accessible that would automatically trigger back after a certain amount of time. Those are the ones that we had directed the contractor to look at, rather than kind of fabricating a pipe and a spigot on a 4x4 post like we have in the existing campground. So that was one of the pieces there, as well as the 1.25 inch copper water main that was planned to be installed. It does meet code for what is planned to be out there for the number of fixtures. Unfortunately, 1.25 inch copper is very uncommon size, so the fixtures were actually going to be about 10 to 12 week lead time. So it would have been a project that we would have ended up having to install in November, which would have been very difficult. What we can do is we can upsize that to 1.5 inches, which actually sets us up really well for a future improvement project with the existing campground, which is far undersized for what's out there, and can service the campground for long term. With that 1.5 inch, obviously there's a small increased cost with that as well. Parts are a lot more readily available from a maintenance standpoint. That also serves us better. If we ever have a leak or an issue, those parts are going to be easily sourced for us as well, rather than 1.25 inches where it may be more difficult. Roughly the cost for both of those things, I believe it was going to be somewhere in the realm of about $7,000 to $8,000 for the hydrants, roughly about $2,500 for the water main. So overall, somewhere in the realm of about $10,000 for the upgraded water and fixtures for the campground. I don't know if the park board had any questions in regards to that stuff. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't have any final numbers from the contractor at this time. Likely by the next time we get to a park board meeting, we will probably be almost done with that work. I don't know if the park board has any specific questions or concerns on that at this time.
I don't believe we do. Yeah, I think it was just simply that we just didn't have the right fixture from the get-go, right?
It was generically defined in there as a frost-free hydrant. In retrospect, I don't design campgrounds on a very regular basis. I wish I would have caught it. Had it been more specified with a specific model number, I think it would have clarified better. But when the contractor and their supplier looked at those plans and they saw a frost-free hydrant, they look at a certain type and they bid a certain price on that, and that may not necessarily be the correct one.
Very good.
Beyond that, the Buster Park Pavilion, my understanding is the concrete was placed for the new sidewalk and slab. Our maintenance staff is going to eye in the next couple of weeks, I believe, getting the new pavilion. We got to drill in some new anchors now with the slab placed. So we'll put some new anchors in and get the pavilion installed and assembled. The disc golf course, my understanding, has been very popular over at Memorial Park. So much so there was a request to put in a picnic table and trash can because there's a pretty decent weight for hole one. And people are kind of throwing some trash on the ground. So we talked with maintenance about getting one over there. And the other update I can quick throw out is the Lum Park Pavilion rehabs. I think talking with High Tech, they're still planning for September. So we're just going to coordinate around the couple reservations during the week, during the work week, just to make sure that they don't have any impacts to those reservations. With that, any questions on that report?
Would appear no.
Okay. The other thing that is a little bit new here, the new complaint form that has been added to the parks website. This is something that came up as part of the discussion with our softball community, pickleball community, about being open and with our communication. Obviously, we've always had our emails available, but to make sure that they felt like we weren't being responsive or didn't have an ability to reach out to us, we added this form to our website that they could always submit a form online, and that would go right to our parks email that would get routed to our staff. So I included, and our intention is to include this with our park board packets as part of our report. These complaint forms, so you can be aware of what folks are saying as they come in. I've also included our responses to some of these whenever they're warranted. Some of them have been in regards to like the Blast Facebook page. Some of them were regarding schedules when they were communicated. So we've just kind of clarified some of those communication pieces. But as of right now, that was all that was received as of when the park board packet has gone in. As far as I understand, I haven't received any further beyond that. But like I mentioned, we will include all of the different complaint forms, and if we have a response to those, we'll include those as well with future park board packets.
Very good. Yeah. Awesome. With that, we'll move on to board member reports. We'll start with JD.
I don't have anything.
Nothing. Paul?
I got nothing.
Well, I have something. The movie was awesome. I actually really enjoyed that experience. It was awesome to have a film only be up for an hour and 40 minutes. Kind of a refreshing taste. But you're right, yeah. The wind did take it occasionally and pushed it around a little bit, but really awesome. Like, I really enjoyed that. I mean, it wasn't... When I rolled down there, I expected it, the cars to be kind of around, but it was a very nice, like, just the right amount of folks down there, but it was a very, very nice experience. And then, yeah, I mean, the complaint form, again, that was just kind of the initiative to open communication and things like that with the public, just so that, we can maybe get a better, because again, it came up in our last board meeting. We had asked, like, hey, what else is going on? What are people saying? And, it was, okay, it was just the schedule, So this gives us an opportunity to kind of, again, it was kind of Nick's idea as well to install this and have a little bit more of a closer touch with folks that are having issues within the park, positive or negative, I guess, almost always negative, but just a little bit better and easier way for us to just read through those and be able to, react to them in our own way and come up with solutions. So instead of just giving staff like, hey, field these emails and figure it out. So more eyeballs on what's ailing the citizenry. But otherwise, yeah, I honestly cannot sing the praises of that movie in the park enough. It was really awesome. So
Nothing for me.
I just want to say welcome to JD. Thanks for coming on.
all right, with that, we'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.